Kull, he did what most of us think we'd like to do. He escaped from civilization for a while, only his escape lasted a full year with no human contact on an island off the coast of Chile. And here to talk about what the heck that was like is Bob Kull, soon to be a PhD.
Good to be here.
Yeah. You have sought solitude before.
Yeah. Yeah, I started when I was a little kid, a few hours, a few days, and then it grew. First long retreat was 3 months here in BC when I was 28.
Right.
And then from there, some of the inner transformations that happened, I thought, oh, someday I'd like to do a year.
Now, to get a year organized in a place where you were 150 miles away from nothing, completely, and practically nothing there, when you get to the 150 miles, that takes tremendous organization.
Yeah, the logistics are really quite incredible. I started a couple, 2 or 3 years before when I'd get really sick of my academic stuff. I just get out my lists and start writing on lists. And because if you wait till the last minute, you know, it's amazing. You stop and think of everything you're going to need for the next year of your life.
Where's that hammer?
Exactly.
And then there's no bloody hammer.
Exactly.
Okay, now you managed to talk the Chilean Navy into delivering you unto this island, this uninhabited rock. Did you have to pay them?
No, they were incredible. They were absolutely incredible. The other option was to pay a fisherman, which this was a real cheap project. I don't have a lot of funding. And so everything I took was secondhand, and when I got down there, to pay somebody would have been very expensive. And so I kept asking around, and finally somebody said, you know, try the Navy. And they took me. They didn't take me where I really wanted to go.
Where did you really want to go?
There was a little tiny bay about 20 kilometers from where I ended up. And they wouldn't take me because it's so unknown that they didn't have depth soundings on the channel.
All right, it was in a channel.
Yeah.
So this is way in the south, just before the Cape there, and like a Punta Arenas, which is...
It's north of Punta Arenas.
North of Punta Arenas.
Right, north of Punta Arenas by land there's a town called Puerto Natales.
Right.
And then from there you go by water out and up the coast.
And it is what latitude?
About halfway between here and the Queen Charlotte's.
Right, so like 51 or something like that.
Yeah, 51 and a half, exactly.
Okay, is the weather comparable to...
Worse. It's just fiercely windy. It's the windiest place on the earth.
Yeah.
The ocean froze sometimes.
The ocean froze.
Yeah, and just huge amounts of rain. And
why did you want to do this? Perhaps we should get that part out of the way.
Well, you know, all these kinds of questions have multiple levels of answer. So probably the most honest one is I just feel a call to solitude from way down.
Yes.
And if I don't answer it, I start getting
hairy?
dead feeling.
Dead.
Well, not so much hairy, just kind of, you know, and sometimes, so this project's been on the back burner for 25 years. And it was always someday, and I've done other shorter retreats in between. But there's just, one of the things is the question comes up, well, we're social beings. We're told this over and over and over by psychologists that we're social beings, so it's unhealthy to disengage and go into solitude. And we are social beings, there's no question. But that is a much more profound statement than is usually. It's not just this. We're social, as we are in solitude, we're still a social being. We don't leave civilization behind just because we leave the trappings. We take it with us in our minds.
Right.
So my consciousness, our consciousness, is a construct, a collective socialization. So even out there in solitude, the consciousness I'm using to experience the world grew within a social setting. And all the way down, right to the cellular, I mean, I'm a collection of bacteria and viruses and skin lice and funguses, and you know,
Lovely
I'm a
picture.
community.
Yes, you are. You're. I am a community. I'm with Bob Kull. 1 year, complete solitude on an island with a cat, an epileptic cat, off the coast of Chile. Where's the cat? Just to...
The cat, I think, is dead. My friend Patty, who came to the island for a month after I'd been alone for a year to help me in the transition, she took the cat back to Texas to take care of. She lives way out in the country, and the cat disappeared after about 3 weeks.
All right.
So my guess is that it died natural causes from having epilepsy so young.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. I had to get to that already.
Yeah.
But only moments ago we were saying, you said you really are a community. You're all of these things. You're bacteria, you're virus, you're this, and but you're other things too.
Yeah, there's the other side of that equation, that we're not only social beings, we're spiritual beings. And in exploring our sociality, it's about network and community. But moving into the deeper into the core of who we are in that spiritual exploration, solitude can be a very powerful tool for that.
Fine, but when you got there, you had to build a shelter.
Right.
That was you smashed yourself up, you twisted things. You only have one leg because you've been, dare I say, reckless, and perhaps in the past. It's all right. You've lost a tooth, you had to yard out yourself. I mean, not all of these things are conducive to being sort of sitting like the Buddha.
Right.
You know, it has to be a lot of work.
Yeah, well, that for me, I'm not geared to just meditation, and I'm not geared to just an active life. And so it was a huge amount of work to create an environment in which I could survive. I did injure myself badly.
Yes.
A real hard thing is my boat got flipped by the wind, and the outboards drowned in salt water, and so I had to deal with that. And just the sense of being overwhelmed by the natural world sometimes. But at the same time, all of that is part of the spiritual practice,
right.
And that feeds into the meditation of surrendering and allowing the world in, instead of defending all the time and pushing away, allowing myself to accept parts of myself that I'm not happy with. And as those inner boundaries start to dissolve, then the boundaries between me and the rest of the world also start to dissolve, and the world around. And there are times when it feels like the whole world's my body. There's a sense that it's all part of who I am, and that there is no separation.
You are. It is true.
That's right.
We don't know it when we're driving in the car on Kingsway.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Intellectually we know, but we don't experience it, and that's what I went for, to explore that experience rather
than... So you are an organism.
Yeah.
Okay, so what were the, apart from the injuries and the tooth pulling and that kind of chaos, what were the toughest moments? Were they lonely moments?
Loneliness, not so much. In some ways, loneliness here is harder, because there, when I was lonely, well, duh. Of course I'm lonely, look what I'm doing.
I am alone.
Yeah, but here, it's if I'm lonely here in the city, it's because I'm a jerk and nobody wants to be around me. So in some ways, it's harder here.
Yes.
Real hard, I went with some expectations from previous retreats, that I'd get blissed out and then it'd just be like this for months and months and months. And I had to accept the fact that it cycles through, that there'd be
like everything else.
Like everything else. There's times like that, and then wake up the next day and just really frustrated, and I don't want to be here. And so that cycling through was really painful sometimes. One of the powers of solitude and difficult is those darknesses, spiritual and emotional darknesses, that we tend to escape in our culture. It's hard to escape from. They come up, and day after day you need to face them. Yeah, and it can be very frightening sometimes.
Did you ever laugh in the entire time you were there? Did you go har har? Was it like a fish did something funny? I don't know.
Yeah, I did laugh. And I laughed at thoughts that would come through my head. I can remember once I was reading a philosopher. I took books, and the last 3 months I gave up reading completely, gave up writing. I'd put my calendar away and the watch away, but for a while I was reading philosophy, and I was reading this philosopher, and it just wasn't making any sense. And I read the same sentence about 3 times, and it was just really starting to hurt my head, and I'd look out and just be with the ocean and the rain and relax, and I read this again, and just like this. And one of the ongoing tasks I had was, I had a 55-gallon drum of gas for the outboard, and I had to siphon it through a hose into smaller cans. And I hate siphoning gas. It always just gets in my mouth. It's just a foul experience. And I'm reading this philosopher, and I finally just put the book down in disgust, and the thought that went through my mind, I probably said it, I'd rather suck gas through a hose than read any more of this shit. And I haven't read that philosopher ever again.
Were you freezing inside your little dwelling?
I had a wood-burning stove.
You took that with you too?
Yeah, and I bought a chimney down there, and the chimney started rotting out right away.
From the salt?
Yeah, from the salt. I bought the best kind I could. And I'm going, oh God, I've got my whole place set up. I got wood in, I got the stove, and now my chimney's rotting. This sucks. But I'd taken 7 cans, big can, you can't get it here in Canada, big cans of powdered milk.
Oh yeah.
And one day, there's lots of time to think about this stuff.
You soldered them together.
No, duct tape.
Duct tape.
Duct tape.
Thank God for duct tape.
I made a new chimney. I cut the ends out and made a new chimney out of these milk cans. They were exactly the same size as the chimney I had. It was perfect.
Sheer perfection. So you were more inventive than you could have ever imagined. You were obviously handy.
Yeah. One of the hard things is making the shelter. The tarp the plan was to staple it onto the wood frame, right? And it was a great plan. I took 2,000 staples and a staple gun, and I got there and I had everything ready to go, and I had the structure all built, and I'm stretching the tarp on it. And I got out the staples, and I'd taken the wrong size staples for the staple gun.
Did you swear like a trooper?
Oh, a whole bunch.
Yeah. And only the pussycat was there to hear you.
Yeah. And
nobody ever came by. No fish, no boat, no fishermen. I mean, no.
The national parks came once to see what this insane gringo was doing out there.
Right.
You know, if he was going to survive the winter.
And do you speak Spanish?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Spanish.
Oh, that's good, because otherwise they might have taken you away in chains.
Yeah.
Did you planes? I guess.
No, at a distance, on clear days, there weren't too many, but on clear days way over the Andes, I'd see jet trails, too small to see the plane. And then twice on the other side of a line of hills, I heard planes go by, but I didn't see any planes or boats.
How many days were you there, alone?
A year and 2 weeks.
So 385 days or something like that.
Patty came and spent
How did she get there?
The Navy brought her too. They were incredible. They took me with all my gear, dropped me off, brought her, and then came back for both of us, picked us up, and they charged us something like $60. You know, they said, sorry, we have to charge you anything, but it's the country, you know, the rule of the country is $16 a day. Just amazing.
$16 a day.
And that includes food, of course.
Yes. What kind of food did you take with you?
Mostly rice and beans. A lot of rice and beans.
Perfect protein.
Yeah. And fish. And there were treats.
You did fish?
I fished a lot, yeah. Whenever the wind had let me, I was out fishing.
What did you catch?
Mostly red snapper. Hard work, deep. And after, when my shoulders were screwed up, it caused a lot of problems just, you know, reeling up, because you have to go down sometimes.
There was nothing else around?
Nothing that I found, no. They were all just deep fish.
You can't take the birds, because they mate for life for the
well,
birds.
There's that, and they're all seafood eaters pretty much. I did consider stealing one of the birds' eggs when they were brooding, but I couldn't find
You never
a
had
nest.
an egg?
Not in a year. So I thought, I'll just go snitch an egg. She won't mind. She probably would have minded.
I would think she would have minded, some big.
And they're very aggressive, those particular geese.
Well, did you see any mammal?
Sea mammals. I saw some mouse noses. I didn't know there were mice on the island until my cat caught a few, and then I came out in the morning and went, what's this? And, oh, it's a mouse nose.
Oh, just the nose alone?
I think he left it to make sure that I knew he was on the job.
Right.
Sea lions and dolphins. The dolphins were just wonderful. They'd come and make love in my front yard sometimes in the kelp beds. It was just incredible.
Did you swim? Can you swim?
It's very cold.
I see.
I went in on purpose once chasing the boat. I had spaced out and left it on the beach, and the tide came up and looked out, and I went, oh my God, my boat, and I ran down. But no, you don't swim in the water. It's
you like a Zodiac kind of boat, did you?
Yeah, it was a Zodiac.
So you lost those engines, those motors?
Well, I fixed them.
You fixed them. Of course you fixed them.
But what was amazing is I'm no mechanic. And I'm just going, oh my God, what am I going to do? But I had taken some spare parts on the recommendation. The motors were used as well, because all of this was low budget. And the guys I bought the motors from suggested which spare parts to take. And I took tools, and I took a manual. And when the boat flipped and I got the motors, I went, oh man, and I looked down the table of contents, and the last entry, what should you do if your motors get drowned in salt water?
You went, it's my page.
That's my page. And it was like, thank you.
So you took apart the motor, and then you just, like, when you look at a motor, it's impenetrable, really.
Well, I didn't take it completely apart. I took apart, you know, I followed the instructions.
And when you started it up?
It ran. What a happy moment that was, because that was low. When I thought it was a tiny island, I hadn't at that point gotten any firewood in. A couple of the propane tanks I was going to use for cooking were still far away, because the Navy started and blew me in one part before the weather got so bad.
So you had to keep trekking back and forth?
No, I just made 2 trips, but I had only made one of the trips when the boat flipped.
You have an artificial leg.
Yeah.
Did you take an extra leg?
No, yes, I did actually. Yeah, I did. There's an old one, an old beat-up one.
Right.
But yeah, it's very slippery there. Even the cat slipped and fell. The duck slipped and fell on the rock. So I slipped and fell too.
So you are going to, this is going to be your thesis, or is it ready, or has it been submitted?
No, it's not ready. I'm writing it, or it's writing me. It's a slow process, and it's very circular. So even this show is part of the research,
of course.
The re-entry into society. They're talking about the experience. It's all part of what's going on.
When did you come back? I listened to you for hours. I hope you do lectures and things.
CTV, Canadian Television.